But it's kind of like a mass. It keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Every one of you watching this screen, look out. Because soon, very soon, the most horrifying monster menace ever conceived will be oozing into this theater. Two teenagers see it first, like a falling star from outer space.
Boy, that was close. Hey, come on. I want to see if I can find it.
An old man finds it, touches it, and this is the shocking result. From then on, there's no stopping the Blob as it spreads from town to town. It's indestructible. It's indescribable. Nothing can stop it.
This town is in danger.
How can it be stopped? Mob hysteria sweeps one city. Before long, the nation, and then the world could fall before the blood-curdling threat of the Blob.
Starring Steve McQueen and a cast of exciting young people.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 7 of 31 Days of Monsters. Wow, and a cast of exciting young people. It's like they're not even actors. I love that. It almost sounds like Andy Smith should have done that. Look at this cast of exciting young people. So we got the 1958's The Blob, which is one of those great B movies directed by Irvin Yeworth Jr. Now, Irvin and his company, up till then, produced religious films for churches and corporate films as well. And they came across. They had met Steve McQueen previously, and they ran into him in New York City. And they talked to him about this film because he's like, "Oh, aren't you the guy that do those religious films?" And he said, "Yeah, Steve was young and he's just getting started. He was looking for work, and this was he was offered the opportunity of his first starring role, and he took it. They went to Central Park, talked it over, told him the story, and they signed a deal just like that in Central Park after a chance meeting of Steve McQueen walking his dog. That's pretty neat. It's kind of like how Chuck and I ended up doing Devil's Advocate. We wrote that whole thing sitting in Central Park, writing on cue cards. But I digress. Steve McQueen, also known as the King of Cool, Wanted Dead or Alive, was the show that this movie actually got for him. And then from then on, he skyrocketed to one of the top, movie stars of his era. The Blob is a fun film. It's another alien film, aliens come to Earth type of thing. And I'm surprised at how when I watched it yesterday, it's been a while since I'd seen it, and I'm surprised at how much in my subconscious I took from it for Alien Alamo. The meteor opening up and revealing some type of a creature that could, take over the Earth eventually. With Alien Alamo, it's these like insect-like, crab-like creatures. But the Blob, who knows what it was? But it's a great monster, and it's a low-budget film, but they shot it in color. They didn't do different takes. Like when there's a sequence where the kids are they're talking to Steve McQueen and his girlfriend in the car, and the camera's set, and Steve McQueen, who's the star of the movie, his back is to us the entire time, but so that they get all the other kids in frame, because they didn't do close-ups and other shots. It's one shot and done and moved on. But it works. It works. It's fun. It's a fun movie. Basically, the premise is that this meteor strikes the Earth. It opens up, and there's this blobby creature inside it, and it consumes flesh. So, whether it's animal or human, it just consumes it. The more it consumes, more blood and flesh it consumes, the bigger it gets. So, ostensibly, it could grow exponentially if it ever got to a large city and started eating, tons of people. I mean, it got to be as big as a house just by eating, maybe 10, 15 people. So, the threat is there that this thing could envelop the world at some point. And I think that was even in some of the posters back in the day. Oops. Here's the movie poster. What a great poster this is. I'll have to show the posters of these 1950s films because sometimes they're better than the movie. They just suck you right into them. Great design elements here. I could see that, in a mark, in front of a theater and like, okay, here's my money. Now, the original title, here's an example of great marketing. The director and his team decided that what they wanted was a title that people would actually make fun of, so that they get free publicity from the comedians of the day, the Steve Allens and the Bob Hopes and whoever had these shows and specials, that they'd be talking about this movie, so it'd be free publicity for them. So they got the team together and they just came up with the most ridiculous names they could. Some of them were, like classic, the horror that rocked the world type stuff, and then one guy suggested the glob that enveloped the Earth, I think it was called. And they were going to go with that. But then they said, well, we'll go with the glob, but they found out that was already trademarked and copyrighted by Al Cap, the cartoonist. So they said, well, what sounds like glob? And they started with A and they got to B. and that is how they came up with the name The Blob. And it worked because all those comedians, were making jokes about this movie and talking about it. And it became very, very successful. Just an incredible, marketing plan that this little company that used to produce religious films came up with. I love those type of stories. The Blob, the actual Blob, was made by Union Carbide because they developed a new product at the time that wasn't readily known, but we use it all the time now. It's called silicone, and that's what the Blob is made of. It's silicone, and to this day, the Blob still exists. It's still in the Union Carbide container, and it's still blobby. It hasn't dried up. You know how I know? Because, shit, got these out of order. Because I saw it. I went to a Monster Bash in Pennsylvania back in 2003, and at that Monster Bash, Kevin McCarthy was there. Bob Burns, and he had brought the armature for King Kong, which I talked about in the King Kong episode. And then the Blob was there. And not only the Blob, but the Blob's set pieces, which is really cool because you see this movie theater back here. That theater does exist in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. But for the special effects, they recreated it on a small scale. And they put it on a platform that they could move back and forth. And they used gravity to make the Blob move. So like this sequence here, when the Blob is coming out of the movie theater, they made these little miniature sets, and then they put the camera on that platform, and then they would rotate the platform to make the Blob, come towards the camera. Pretty ingenious. this sequence when I was a kid, I mean, the Blob scared the hell out of me when I was a kid, and I saw it for the first time. Again, I didn't know it was in color. I saw it in black and white, so it made it even scarier to me. But this sequence with the old man really freaked me out. This is Olin Howland, who's a longtime character actor who's been in a million movies. He's in Them. He's the alcoholic guy who says, tells the army guys if he gives them a drink, I forget what the phrase was he used, but he does this sing-song routine. He's in The Angel and the Bad Man with John Wayne, and he's got a resume as long as your arm. But I didn't know that at the time when I saw this. He just seemed like an old man who had the bad luck of discovering the Blob, and he picks it up with that stick, and it slides down on his arm and starts to consume him. And then the teenagers almost hit him on the road, and they find him and they take him to a doctor. And from there, the Blob continues to grow, and it's one of those stories where the teenagers aren't believed, because they're juvenile delinquents, so to speak. And it's funny because these juvenile delinquents seem very clean cut. All they're doing is driving their cars fast, and they sometimes they talk like a bunch of hepcats, but that's about it. You'd want your kids to be like this, but there's this one cop there who's this is one of those little layered backstory things that it's a little heavy-handed, but whatever. He hates the kids and all they represent and the anarchy, and he was in the war, and his wife ended up was killed by a teenage driver or something like that. So he's got a real hard on against the teenagers. And then there's the good cop, who believes Steve, and and finally they're forced to believe because they actually see the Blob. But this is a fun movie. It's got some genuine thrills. It's got the oldest teenagers I've ever seen. At this time, Steve McQueen was 28 years old, had served in the Marine Corps, and doesn't look anything like a high schooler, But it works because McQueen went into it saying, I'm not going to play young. I'm going to play sincere. So, he's kind of like wide-eyed, and, he's certainly believable in the role, even though he's not that tall. So, you buy into it, if you're going to buy a silicone creature running around eating people, you'll buy that. Here's our old teenagers. This guy here, the guy next to Steve McQueen in the blue plaid shirt, Tony is the character, is actually only 18. Can you believe that? Look at that guy. He looks like he's like 20, 25, 28 years old. All these guys, they all look like grown men to me. But that's pretty funny that this guy really is only 18 years old. Here's an example of gravity. Actually, in this one, they might have just shoved it through like Play-Doh, like those little Play-Doh machines. I think that's what they did. I think they just forced it through the holes on that set piece. It's interesting that Steve McQueen sort of was dismissive of this movie. I mean, he realized it helped launch his career, but he also realized it made a ton of money, and he didn't receive that, and so I think there's a little bit of resentment that he didn't get paid throughout the years for this film. But he got paid what he signed on for as a newbie actor. But the interesting thing is, after he had this incredible career, and then when he passed away, in his home there was only one movie poster on his wall of a movie he was in, and it wasn't The Sand Pebbles, it wasn't The Cincinnati Kid or The Great Escape or The Magnificent Seven. It was The Blob. Isn't that something? So there you have it, folks. There's 1958's The Blob. They did a remake in 1988, which was actually pretty good as far as making a remake of a beloved classic film. It really is pretty good. They keep the whole juvenile delinquent thing going, but this time he's 1980s version. He really seems like a delinquent. It's what's that kid's name? Matt. His brother was in the Warriors, or the Outsiders, rather. I can't remember his name. But one of you guys will tell me. You guys are smart. But anyway, that's a pretty good remake. So good morning, everybody. Good morning, Harold Pridemore, Rick Saylor, Dr. Mask, Pop Culture Avenger, Raven Saber. Dr. Mask has not seen this movie. That's something. Fearless Freep is here. JP Roca, Prater 7, Hyper Kaiju, George Travalos. George says they recreate the scene where they run out of the movie theater every year in Phoenixville, PA, where the shot was originally filmed. I ran across pictures of that when I was doing research for this. It's pretty cool. Everybody's smiling as they're running out. Nobody looks scared. George likes Wanted Dead Alive with Steve McQueen. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of episodes of that, just a few, and the ones I've seen I liked. I liked his little pistol shotgun too. No, it was like a Winchester, wasn't it? It wasn't like a sawed-off Winchester, because it had a lever action, I think. Prater 7 says one of his best friends when he was in his 20s was a guy who looked exactly like Steve McQueen. Well, he must have been hit with the ladies. Good morning, Rob Younce. Thrim is here. Good morning. Christopher Juliano. I hope you've figured out the Facebook issues there, Chris. Yeah, man, the teens have some groovy hot rods. Brady 7 wants to hear more about Chuck and I writing that book in Central Park. Did he write up small things and you sketched out stuff? Sounds interesting. No, I wasn't sketching at all. We were writing it together. We co-plotted that book together, Devil's Advocate. It was our answer to The Killing Joke, because both of us hated that celebration of violence porn and didn't like the ending of it, because the payoff wasn't there. He sets it up and it becomes more and more shocking throughout the story, but there's no payoff. In fact, it's antithetical to who Batman was. So just like Howard Hawks and John Wayne made Rio Bravo as a answer to High Noon, we made Devil's Advocate as an answer to The Killing Joke. But yeah, we co-plotted it in Central Park, writing on 3x5 cards, because it was a mystery as well. So we had to place things in order. So we wrote down the sequences or scenes that we wanted to put into the book, and then we could rearrange the cards so that the narrative worked without revealing anything. Billy Glasby, hello, how are you? Yesterday's movie was one of the posters outside the movie theater. Yeah, this the style of poster was great. Like the covers to older paperback books, great stuff. Yeah, illustration was at its zenith for this kind of thing back then. Hyperkaiju says, what I like about this movie poster is how it accurately portrays how the monster looks, unlike plenty of other movie posters of this time. Yeah, it does. Well, what could you? I guess they could have put teeth on him or something like that, but Phyllis Freep says, I have only seen the show out on out black and white on our black and white TV. I remember Z signs like that on the theater air conditioned inside on department stores and drugstores. Always wanted to go inside. Dr. Mass says that's a great idea for marketing. There is no bad publicity as long as they spell your name right. Yeah, and the Blob's name right. I mean, it's a one-word name. You can't remember. You can't say, "Oh, what was the name of that movie?" It sticks with you. And then they went ahead and they hired a young composer named Burt Bacharach to create that little song that begins in the beginning. And that went on to become a hit, sold a lot of 45s. The director didn't really want that theme song. But once he heard it, he realized, oh man, this is going to be a hit. And again, it helped push the movie. Everybody was talking about the Blob in 1958. Pop Culture Avenger says it looked like industrial grease for machines. Yeah, it did. But it's silicone. Just like the Horta in Star Trek. See, there's a Star Trek reference. A creature of pure silicone. A silicone-based life form. Oh, cool. Rob Yount says he's going to the Phoenixville Colonial Theater this weekend to see Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. You know, as I mentioned the other day, if you have the chance to see any of these movies, and a lot of theaters are showing some of these classics on their screens, go see them, because to see it on the big screen is really something. It really puts you into it much more than seeing it on TV. It seems more real when you see it on the big screen. I have seen so many of these things on the big screen, but one I have not seen is Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and I would love to see that movie. So, Rob, enjoy. JP Roker, there's a great video of Al Capp versus John Lennon on YouTube. He just destroys the hippie generation. Oh, I'm going to have to look that one up. Devilfly says McQueen should have taken a percentage for this breakout hit. Well, he should have, but who'd known? You know, it was a cheapy, independent film made by a company that makes religious films. You know, he figured it'd be one and done, but at least, you know, he was the star of a color film. Reminds me of Stephen King and the Meteorite and Creepshow. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Chris. Kevin Dillon. Matt Dillon was the brother. Yeah. So Kevin Dillon is in the remake of The Blob, the 1988, I think, remake, which is, you know, obviously a little bit more graphic, quite a bit more graphic actually, but it's really good. It's real creepy and scary. So with global warming, the greatest thing we have to fear is the blob. Yeah, that's right. Once it warms up there and thaws out the blob, we got trouble. I think there was a sequel. Iwazaru says, weren't there sequels like Son of Blob or Bride of Blob? I think there is a sequel. I'm not positive on that. I have to look it up. Dr. Mask is reminding everybody to make an SJW cry by hitting the like button. So do that. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell for reminders. And here's a fun little what if. What movie monster would be a good match versus the Blob? Okay, gang, discuss. I don't know. George didn't like the Killing Joke either. Well, you'd love Devil's Advocate then. The premise of Devil's Advocate is that the Joker finally gets convicted of his crimes and he's sentenced to death. But it's a crime he didn't commit. And Batman has a moral dilemma, because he's about justice. He wants the Joker. He'd love to have the Joker, taken out. But he didn't do this. So that means there's a murderer running free. So he's got to find out who it was. My favorite moment in Devil's Advocate is when Batman is explaining why it's important to find who the true killer is, not just let the charges be pinned on the Joker. Great dialogue. Yeah, we worked hard on that book to really establish who Batman is and why he does what he does. Pain, referring to the Horta. Stat Zero is chiming in. Good morning. Oh, I got to get rid of this. Get yourself a projector, Graham. A projector? Not sure what you mean or what for. Love this movie. My mother had me watch it before the remake in the 1980s. I put it close with the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Well, that is a wonderful dovetail into one of the changes in the lineup. Because tomorrow, what's tomorrow? Tomorrow's Friday, right? I'm going to do the original 1956 Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And then Saturday morning, we're going to do the rare remake that's as good, the 1978 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So we're going to do the two Invasion of the Body Snatchers back to back. Compare and contrast. I saw Frankenstein in theaters early this month, then went home and watched Bride, Son, and Ghost. Ghost of Frankenstein was so much better than I expected. Yeah, it really is. And other than the fact that the monster is a little beefy, a little overfed, if you will, Chaney Jr. was pretty good. He played the monster twice. He played it in Ghost of Frankenstein. And then when Glenn Strange broke his ankle throwing the girl out the window and Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, Lon Chaney Jr. had to step in for that follow-up scene. How's that for trivia? Yep, Fathom Events is doing double features for Invisible Man and Wolfman in select theaters October 30th. Yeah, they just did Frankenstein and Dracula. And local theaters are doing stuff too. I've got some local theaters here that are showing Revenge of the Creature and Tarantula. I believe the Tarantula is up on Sunday for 31 Days of Monsters. I think that's the movie we're doing Sunday. Delaware Comic Dude sequel is Beware the Blob. Oh, that's right. That's right. It was in the 1970s. I think I tried watching that. Is there a way to find out about theaters airing older movies, or is it just a matter of checking the theaters themselves? Yeah, you got to check your local theaters. Fathom Events is a national one, obviously, and they'll play it at national theater chains. But your local theaters, if you have them in your area, are the best bet for this kind of stuff. Graham, there's a horror movie on this morning I've never seen, Werewolves on Wheels from 1971. I don't know if you've ever seen the poster for that, but it's amazing. It's werewolves riding chopper motorcycles with half-naked girls hanging off the backs of them. And I know the movie isn't going to be that good. I've never seen it, but I remember the posters being shown in the Monster Times magazine that I used to read. If that's on TCM, that means it'll go into demand, and I'll have to watch it. Oh, Hyper Kaiju, the Crawling Eye versus the Blob. Yeah. That could be cool. Yeah, but doesn't the Crawling Eye like it cold because he's up in the mountains there? Yeah, you might have the advantage over the Blob, you know. Like the Crawling Eye. I love the Crawling Eye. It is a staple for me. I watch that every single year. I've done the Crawling Eye in the past, obviously, because it is one of my all-time favorites. Forrest Tucker is a two-fisted scientist, you know, who gets to knock out some dudes. And just, you know, the effects are just, you know, again, with these movies, as ludicrous as they may be, some of them, it's the sincerity that sells them. It's the lack of self-awareness by the actors that they're in these type of things. You believe it because they believe it. And that's what makes these B movies so wonderful to watch. It sucks you in. Immersion, again. Danky Frankie says he liked The Killing Joke. People don't like it. Some people hate it. Stat Zero says Devil's Advocate, DC's best kept secret, one of the greatest Joker stories ever told, and they leave it out of everything. Always burned me. Well, I couldn't agree more, my friend. There's a warning label on the Crawling Eye poster that says, if you've ever been hypnotized, do not come alone. That's great marketing. Yeah, the original title is The Trollenberg Terror. Because it was originally shown in England. But when it's distributed here in the US, it became The Crawling Eye. The original Fly has that charm. The way Vincent Price talks about a human fly with a straight face. Yeah. Yeah, all of those B movies, you know, the worst of them, even like From Hell It Came, with the walking tree, the tabanga, walking around, somehow walking slower than a tortoise, is somehow able to chase down people and kill them. It's got a great Paul Blaisdell design, but it's just horrible. But you believe that the people believe it, that there's a walking tree, that it's a possessed man is inside that tree type of thing. Why don't I like The Killing Joke? Well, because it's a celebration of violence porn with no payoff. Batman's best friend, his daughter, are ravaged in this by this psychopath, and there's at the very end, when Batman finally captures him, he not only allows the Joker to tell him some stupid joke, he laughs at it. They commiserate over the humor of the joke, so there's really no payoff for what the Joker's crimes, regardless of whether he dragged him off to jail later on. There should have been something more substantial, something more satisfying to offset the crimes that we were forced to witness as readers. Day of the Triffids is a good film. Yeah, that has a really creepy premise. The BBC just did a remake of that a few years ago as a miniseries. Delaware Comic Dude wants to know, what do you think of It Came From Beneath the Sea? One of my favorites. Ray Harryhausen, special effects. Yeah, that's got the six-armed octopus in it, which is really cool. It also has Ken Tobey, who I love everything that Ken Tobey's in, especially The Thing from Another World. It's a little slow, the whole romance thing between Faith Domergue and Ken Tobey, and then the other professor, doctor, or something like that. Slows it down immensely, but it's not a bad one. The joke at the end of Killing Joke is a symbol showing Batman break character just before he murders the Joker. That's the implication. I still hate it. That's people reading more into it than there is. There's no indication whatsoever that he murders the Joker. So that's, people are reading too much into that. If that's the case, then he failed in relaying that message across, because it's too obtuse. Stat Zero is correct here. Put me in for not being a fan of the story. Love the Boland art. Even more regrets writing that story. That's very true. I've read a few things Alan Moore said about that. Mike Joseph says, I wish someone would release the original Day of the Triffids on Blu-ray. It's never gotten a legitimate DVD release. Yeah, it would be nice if they cleaned it up. Maybe get the Criterion cleanup job. Because Howard Keel is great in that. It's such a great concept. And the sequence in the lighthouse is really great. All right, my friends, we've covered everybody in here. Excellent, excellent. So tomorrow, as I mentioned, we're going to do the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And then the following day, we're going to explore the 1978 version and compare and contrast. If you haven't seen either of them, check them out. Rent them on Amazon, or these things are easy enough to find. Some of them are even free on YouTube or Netflix. Just check all the streaming services first, and then rent them if you have to. Oh, a bunch of stuff is coming in. It's not a party till we talk Night of the Lepus, where they unleash regular-sized rabbits on miniature trailer parks. Yeah, DeForest Kelly is in that, and Stuart Whitman, Rory Calhoun, you know. The 70s was an amazing period. I mean, you had a lot of these former stars that were bigger stars, sort of on the tail end or in a bump in their career, doing some of these movies to pay bills. Let's face it, they're working actors, working men trying to, put food on the table. And so some of the opportunities that were offered to them weren't stellar, but they are fun to watch. Oh, there we go. Hyperkaiju says the 1978 Invasion of the Body Snatchers is free on YouTube. I don't know about the original. Oh, there you go. So check those out. Okay, gang, we'll see you tomorrow. Same bat time, 8 o'clock. And we're going to talk about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Have a great one.